Off the coast of the only country that begins with the letter O, divers are suiting up to explore a pristine underwater reef. They're here to work, but they're not getting paid. They're trying to preserve part of Oman's natural beauty that has been damaged by fishing nets. A fisherman's son is among the people who regularly dive here. He says when nets fall on lettuce corals, they're cut in half and eventually die. So a volunteer team works to remove the nets, as well as monitor the reefs for species that threaten coral and keep tabs on wherever damage has occurred. As an Omani environmentalist puts it, coral reefs are considered a refuge for marine habitat and wildlife in general. They must be preserved. Thanks for taking time out of your day to watch the world from A to Z. I'm your host, Carl Azuz. A pair of disasters in different parts of the Indian Ocean are our next topics. The first takes us to the African country of Tanzania. It's a nation reeling from weekend floods and resulting landslides. Northern areas have seen communication lines go down, roads get blocked, homes, buildings, and farmland damaged, and at least 63 people have lost their lives. According to the British Broadcasting Corporation, flooding is reportedly the biggest natural weather threat in Tanzania, and excessive rainfall, partly blamed on this year's El Niño phenomenon in the Pacific, made things worse than they usually are. Meteorologists say more rain is on the way. Traveling northeast, we come to the South Asian country of India, whose southern city of Chennai is dealing with flooding of its own. This is the result of Cyclone Migjam, which made landfall on Tuesday afternoon. Sustained wind speeds were around 60 miles per hour, which made Migjam the equivalent of a strong tropical storm. It killed at least 17 people, despite coastal evacuations that were made in advance. Flooding and high winds caused significant damage in the region. On this date in world history. December 6, 1865 saw the formal abolishment of slavery in the United States. This date is when the 13th Amendment was ratified. It stated that neither slavery nor involuntary servitude would exist in the country except as punishment for a crime. The 13th Amendment was the first to be ratified after the Civil War. On this date in 1884, a capstone and aluminum pyramid were placed on top of the Washington Monument. That completed the 555-foot-high structure and made it the tallest human-built monument on Earth. At least until that whole Eiffel Tower thing came along. But as long as we're in Europe, December 6, 1921 was when the Anglo-Irish Treaty was signed by delegates from Ireland and Britain. The controversial agreement formally ended the Irish War of Independence and created the Irish Free State, though Northern Ireland was allowed to opt out and stay part of the United Kingdom. The treaty was followed by the Irish Civil War. The rate of inflation, the rise in prices of the things we buy, has cooled off in recent months. Things still cost over 3% more than they did last year at this time, but that's a lower increase than we saw in 2022 or 2021. Still, the higher inflation rates of those years, combined with the more modest ones of this summer and fall, mean that goods now cost significantly more in America than they did a few years ago. And in a recent survey by WalletHub, a personal finance company, almost 50% of Americans said inflation would impact their charitable giving. Higher interest rates on the money they borrow, say for a car or house, may also be having an impact.
Are fewer Americans donating to charities? That appears to be the trend according to this year's Giving Tuesday numbers. Giving Tuesday CEO saying this: "We are concerned to see a decline in participation in line with giving trends from the past year. Data shows roughly 34 million Americans participated in Giving Tuesday. And while that sounds like a lot, it's actually a 10% decline from last year," the CEO said. To put that in perspective, more than 200 million Americans shopped between Thanksgiving, Black Friday, and Cyber Monday, according to the National Retail Federation. So the decrease in the number of donors isn't because Americans are tightening their wallets.
Consumers are thinking about their wallets very differently.
Holiday spending is surging. Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales broke records this year. So clearly Americans are spending, but this year experts say shoppers are being more specific about how they spend.
A world of knowledge. What is the least populated state in America? Alaska, North Dakota, Vermont, Wyoming. With fewer than 600,000 residents, the state with the smallest population is Wyoming.
But of course, we welcome all of our amazing viewers from the Cowboy State. That includes Mrs. Mitchell's class. Great to see y'all at Central High School in Wyoming's state capital, Cheyenne. And in the Rough Rider state of North Dakota, Mr. Warner or Mr. Wanner's class is watching today from Dickinson High School in Dickinson. Last week, we asked for your feedback on cell phones in schools after a related report from New Zealand. My coworker Lindsay has some of your responses.
These were so good. It's too bad we only have time for a few. From Ms. Bill Hart's class at Assumption Parish School in Missouri, we mostly say should be allowed, but kept somewhere and not on our persons throughout the day so they're not distracting. Mr. Deal and Mr. Wick from East Troy, Wisconsin say pretty much all agreed that phones can be helpful, but they aren't yet able to fully control their impulses and use them properly. A comment from Mr. Zurcher's class at Maplewood High School in Guys Mills, Pennsylvania read, "Some people have really difficult lives outside of school, and a phone is their only way to stay in contact with the people they love. I think they should keep in safe areas, so if something happens, they can get them, but they can't just have them in class." And from Mr. Maslin at Wabash Middle School in Wabash, Indiana, students seemed split in my classroom. Many students admitted that phone use can be a serious distraction, used inappropriately to cheat, play games, or watch videos. Other students stressed the importance of safety by having their phones. To quote one of my students, "You should be allowed to have it with restrictions, as long as there is no dilly-dallying." I'm Lindsay Wolfgang Mast for The World from A to Z.
We've done reporting on rideshare services and autonomous taxis before. There's a unique remote taxi program in Britain where you have to do the driving yourself, but it costs about half as much as an Uber. How it fetches you is the big reason why it's making news.
A British startup company has a new product called Fetch, and it's hitting the road remotely. It launched a partially remote driving service, and I say partially because they'll bring the car to you, but
you become your own Uber driver and save cost on your Uber trip.
A remote driver brings the car to your door, you drive it to your destination, and from the comfort of their office, they drive it away after you arrive. Equipped with pedals and steering wheels originally used for video games, Fetch drivers rely on live-streamed video from all four sides of the car to see where they're going.
The driver makes driving decisions and exerts the control over the car back to the vehicle, all via the wireless communication networks 4G and 5G now.
With 4G connections, remote drivers are limited to traveling 30 miles per hour, while a 5G connection allows remote drivers to go fast enough to hit the highway. But if you travel somewhere without a 5 or 4G connection,
the vehicle will execute emergency stop maneuvers to bring the vehicle into stop safely.
Not an ideal outcome. So for now, Fetch is confined to a 4-mile radius of its home city's strong 5G hub. 4 cars have been retrofitted with the cameras and software they need to go fetch their customers. And remote drivers, they can complete training in just a day. Fetch hopes to one day become a fully remote service.
Well, there's no shortage of folks willing to deck their homes with bunches of Christmas lights this time of year, but this home in Germany is decked out on the inside. The owner says he could have done exterior decorations like everyone else, but that he wanted to have something he could look at all the time. There's a lot to look at, probably not a lot of moving around, but the 555 trees in these halls are a superlative according to the Records Institute of Germany, and the owner wants to hit 600 next year. They must have quite an attic. Guess if you're a sap for furs and you pine to side-press the limits of sprucing up your home with something that might needle visitors, but you cedar is noble, there are few things grander than him locking up all the ornamental lumber you have Himalayan around. After all, trees the season. I'm Court Lazeus, thankful you've alighted on The World from A to Z. You mean the world to me.